today we have just a little bit coming up for you on a bit of a flash stream on your Saturday. Now, buzzwords in these times: imagine, rethink, let's play it out. More coming right up. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Black Spring with Autumn on your Saturday, and good afternoon and good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I just want to give a warm hello to the patrons, the subscribers, and the followers on Periscope. Thank you guys so much for coming in on a bit of a flash. I typically don't stream on Saturdays, but why not? I had some thoughts to share, so I said, why not do it? But thanks so much for coming in. And today we're going to do a little bit of, as you heard in the bit of the opening here, we're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to connect some buzzwords again with the terms that you've heard. Imagine, rethink. I mean, what if you had $1 for every time you heard these idioms or these buzzwords? I mean, I would imagine that some people haven't quite heard them just yet, but that's it just happens to be my objective to bring that to you on this channel. And it all kind of goes back, it just keeps going back to what appears to be a bit of a global loop. And we'll play a bit of it out with a couple of liners, and I'll give you a little bit of that, the rhetoric behind it. But we have heard a bit from quite a few nation states and those leaders. So I will follow that up with you. So I'll tell you, we'll do about 2.5 segments is what I'll call this. We'll have a we'll have a segment on we'll have a segment on what I'm calling King Newsom and his the have and have nots, a little bit of the culture that's created amongst the elite and yeah, the elite. They just keep getting fatter and happy, wherever you are. Who knows? Maybe there's an elite amongst you that's making the decisions for your kids and your schools, and who knows? But on the second segment, we will go into a bit of a did you miss the International Men's Day or did you? And for what I'm calling the half segment, the demi segment, we'll do the walk away movement takes on CNN outside of their office today. So we'll see what goes, what comes up. Thank you guys so much for tuning in on this Saturday. And hello to Angela Reed, Melinda Ann Burns, J Rock, and Philip J. Turner. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much to Melinda Ann Burns, who says, I wouldn't have any financial worries. There you go. Thanks so much, Melinda Ann Burns. Very observant. So, with that said, I'm going to give a word to the sponsors, and then we'll just kick right off. We'll kick right off with King Newsom. It just seems that we can't quite get away from the elites. I mean, on the West Coast, of course, you've got King Gavin Newsom, who just seems to be invincible to any form of the Constitution or any section of the Constitution, any recalls. I'm not sure where that's going. But then we also have Let Moi, that would be Nancy Pelosi. So, it's always, you have to laugh because it's pretty entertaining. And as I've said, this is the greatest show on earth. And at times it seems that that's pretty much all we can do is observe and try to prepare within our own try to stay prepared within our own methods. So I'll take you first to the sponsors, and then we'll have a word from our friends at the JBS. We'll get started. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn on your Saturday. If you're looking for great content creators on the subject of automobiles, current events, politics, culture, history, you name it, take a look at our patrons: Derek C. Williams, Killer Whale Channels, The Definition of Anarchy, Chrysler Imperial H, Let the Truth Be Told, Little Miss Goth, AZ Infidel, Cold War Jesus, and Anthony Scioli. And now, back to the news. Thank you guys so much again, and a warm hello to Silly As I Want to Be. Nice to see you. Thank you so much for coming in, and Philip J. Turner, Melinda Ann Burns, J. Rock. Thank you so much, J. Rock, for coming in, as well as Angela Reed. So what we'll do is we will have a word from our friends at the JBS, and we will get into that segment. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in on your Saturday. This segment of our show is brought to you by our good friends at the John Birch Society. Less government, more responsibility, and with God's help, a better world. The JBS is a constitutional and educational organization that's been around for over 60 years, dedicated to upholding and defending the Constitution and working to preserve our freedoms and liberties in this country. The JBS does not endorse any political party or candidates. Rather, it focuses on the education, training, and development of the American voters. All right, guys, thank you so much for all that you do, and thanks so much for taking care with those channelytics. As you know, we're trying to stay above the fray, or at least hang on in the fight around here. So I'll take you to our first liner, and as you can see, this comes from our friends at the TNA. This one's written by Luis Miguel. California libs turn on Newsom for letting poor schools remain closed while rich reopen. Isn't that ironic? There has to be a little bit of irony in that. I mean, because that's the thing that they talk about, that they preach. Oh, it's a part of our platform. We got to get these, we have to have life in legal. We have to have equity and da 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 da. But then you run into this personality. Every time you look around, you've got Newsom or Pelosi in the news. So with that said, I'm going to bring you this liner, and I'll give you my assertion on that right after we're done here. So hope you guys are doing well out there. If you are on the Golden Coast, and you're picking up what I'm putting down right about now. So I'll start here. So as you can see here, it says, is the Golden State's governor on his way to a fall from grace? In California, progressive groups are surprisingly turning against Democrat Governor Gavin Newsom for allowing the state's biggest school districts to remain shuttered, with critics saying it's unfair that minority students in poor communities have to stay home while wealthier whites in private schools get to resume in-person learning. The disparity between wealthier and lower income schooling was highlighted in October when Newsom announced that his own children had returned to private school in Sacramento, while students in the neighborhood's public schools had to stay home. Patrick O'Donnell, a Democrat, the chairman of the State Assembly Education Committee, said the current situation in California amounts to, quote, state-sanctioned segregation, end quote. Quote, some kids get to go and some don't. That's not what California stands for, end quote, he said. Quote, I think we need to move faster but remain thoughtful, end quote. All right. And looks like we have a little bit of Politico here. Looks like they want to play a little bit of devil's advocate. I'll get into that later. But Teachers and some families assert that large city districts often have older classrooms with poor ventilation and too little space to socially distance. Many say they or their family members have health risks that make them vulnerable to exposure. And they say that districts and governments that have not made testing accessible enough to ensure schools are safe. They now point to a surge in the CV-19 cases this month, the pace of which Newsom said Monday was, quote, simply without precedent in California's pandemic history, end quote. Newsom was alarmed enough to place 41 counties in the state's most restrictive tier, prohibiting indoor church services, dining, and gym activities for 94% of residents. Quote, this isn't politics at all, end quote. California Federation of Teachers President Jeff Freitas said, quote, there's no gain from labor in this. Teachers have had their livelihoods threatened or are doing 10 times the amount of work plus an extra level of stress on themselves. There's no win for us to say we should do remote learning, end quote. Okay, so there you see what I mean? That's I'm picking that up as a Politicos, they're inserting this as a devil's advocate because on some level, I think, well, what do you think? Politicos maybe biased, a little bit biased in this situation, and maybe they actually agree with the California Federation of Teachers and Newsom, perhaps. So O'Donnell asserted, quote, we need strong guidance from the executive branch. We might be dead last to open, and our students might be dead last when it comes to academic success if we're not careful, end quote. While the California Federation of Teachers, the CFT, called on the state to shut down all schools as it did in the spring, Newsom has not required campuses to close if they're already opened. He is also allowing private schools to stay open. Most private campuses open thanks to a waiver process the governor offered when the school year began or when the counties had fewer CV-19 cases. Just as with school closures in the spring, California school reopenings have tended to take place along political lines, with more rural and conservative regions allowing students to return to class, while bluer regions or bluer areas remain strictly distance-based. Distance-based. Quote, in places that are bluer, there's more deference given to the concerns of organized labor, end quote, said veteran education lobbyist Kevin Gordon, who represents school districts. Quote, they're in a political environment that's more welcome to that viewpoint. That's one of the reasons why we've seen private schools open at a faster pace. They are much more immune to community pressure than the public school is, and they don't have to deal with the union. That doesn't make it good or bad. It's just the political reality, end quote. Now, according to the Orange County Supervisor Don Wagner, who previously served as a Republican lawmaker, has criticized the state's take on school reopenings, accusing the government of, quote, marching in lockstep with teachers' unions and of failing to set a threshold for when districts should start bringing students back. Quote, life is not risk-free, and to suggest that, oh, our kids will be fine, they won't fall behind, we just need to get to what? No coronavirus deaths, Wagner said. Quote, one of my frustrations with our governor is that there is no end game. There's nothing where the governor or the school superintendent says, quote, let's get here and we can open up. Clovis Unified School District in Fresno County is using an extremely localized form of control, permitting all elementary schools the green light to reopen, but leaving the final say with each principal. Quote, we're face to face showing, hey, none of us have gotten sick. None of us have died, end quote, said Clovis Unified trustee Stephen Fogg. Quote, we are in session every single time. We have not stopped being together. So once again, I want to give a warm hello to everybody in the stream. Hope you guys are doing well out there. And hello to Old Head Deuce. I thank you so much for tuning in. So I don't know. What do you guys think? There is no end game because I do agree that I do believe that the state of California, I think they've been in lockstep for some time with teachers unions. And it seems that they just can't, they want to run the roost. You know, they've made their demands. They made their demands earlier this year in terms of equity. They put the equity caveat in every single thing upon negotiating when the initial conversations came up about returning to schools. They were talking about they made their demands, and it just seems like everybody else just moused out. And when something comes up, they are right in the middle. So it's like they are the middlemen. They are the middlemen, or they're acting as some kind of as if it's almost like they are a state institution. Some of these teachers unions. I mean, they're showing dominance all over the country. It's not just California. But the point of this is Newsom has no problem making it more difficult. He doesn't. Does he actually? Is he actually concerned about the students, the have-nots? No, he's not. But he's also. But what he can do is he figured, oh, he can satisfy the teachers unions as well as keep the private students going at the same time. So, but this is not astonishing by any it's not astounding by any stretch, because this is the type of thing that liberals do. They want to give you culture. They want to give you everything, even if the end game is destructive. If it's self-destructive, that's what it'll be. The end game is whatever it is. It has nothing to do with disparities or equitable. It has nothing to do with that. I mean, his kids are not affected by what's happening in the public school, or they're just not. And that's but they're the ones that are calling the shots. And I just don't know. I don't know what the I mean, I don't know what the end game is. I just know that those kids are already suffering, the ones that are either in a poor district, or maybe they were already behind, or the public schools to me are being run by these teachers unions. They've kind of got them by the I don't want to say it. It's a four letter, I guess it's a five-letter word, and they're kind of running the roost. And I think Newsom has figured out how to stay, as he's figured out how to satisfy everybody or keep everybody at bay. All the elites are going to be kept at bay. Every single one. So shout out to everybody in the stream. Hi, hello to Unique View. Thank you so much for coming in. So yeah, so he's not, he goes out into his little French Laundry dinners, and all of his little, state people are hanging out together. This to me, I've talked about this many times, and I've said this before. I do believe that we're dealing with more, at times we're dealing with more of a class warfare than anything. They talk about COVID bringing, opportunities, and they really, COVID's doing this and COVID's doing that. No, it's you guys, the elite. You guys are the one, you're using COVID to meet the demand for your socialism and for your tyranny. That's exactly what you're using it for. So when they run out of COVID, what are they going to go to next? They're going to go to climate change. I mean, I'm just saying, and if I'm wrong, I'll be glad to say it. I'll be glad to say it. But I think once COVID, whatever is on the other side of the COVID mountain, I do believe it's going to look like climate change. So shout out to everybody in the stream. Thank you guys so much for taking the time out to come in on your Saturday. But it's very, education is still important. And I will say I can empathize absolutely with those who are not fortunate enough to go to a private school or either a charter school. But then it also brings the idea of the school choice. Of course, you can't have school choice, because what is that going to do? It's going to cut your teachers unions out. They're not going to be happy if the school choice gets in the way. No, they're not going to be happy with that at all. And yes, these students that have not had instruction or an adequate instruction, or they're going to be behind. I don't think you need to be Columbo to figure that out. I mean, I would imagine there are many things that you can do online, but I will say it takes a special it it takes a level of, to me, there's almost an aptitude to doing courses online, and it can even be challenging even for an adult, because you have to be, not only do you have to be attentive, but you also have to, there's a learning curve. You have to learn the interface of whatever system, your learning management system that you're using. There's just so many factors that go into this whole distance learning, this Zoom style learning. It's challenging. It's challenging even for adults. It can be. And then some people say, "Oh, well, distance learning is not for everybody." No, it's not. And I would say not. But I certainly don't know if I would even, I mean, testing it out on kids, letting kids be a guinea pig for an entire year. I don't think that's a safe play either. I don't. But you have to do something. So, but what are they doing? What are they doing? They're really not, like I said, Gavin Newsom could care less about the disparities and whether somebody's on grade level by the time the next year rolls around. He could care less if your fourth grader is reading at first grade level, or yeah, whatever the assessment is, whatever the bar is, he could care less whether your kid can make the cut or not. And on top of that, we talk about disparities. Not all parents can afford to send their kids to a private institution. And not to mention, as taxpayers, most people pay taxes whether they have kids or not, or whether they can afford to send their kids to private schools or not. So it's like there's a double dipping going on here. You're paying for your kid to go to private school, but then you're also paying your taxes support the local and the public schools. So it's really it's a catch 22, and California is not going to be the place to figure it out, my friends. It's really not. So, this is par for the course for Newsom. I mean, he's going to do some more things, and he'll come out and he'll apologize, and you know. Hello, Nick Smith. Thank you guys so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. So, let's see. Joshua Goff, thank you so much for coming in. I'm going to read a couple of comments before I take us on to the second segment here. Silly As says, I haven't had a chance in 9 years. I don't even turn the TV on. Okay. Thank you so much. I wanted to read Joshua Goff's comment. He says, giant ice cube in the sea. Climate change plan number 1. Thanks so much for sharing that. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for coming in, guys. I really appreciate it. All right, so we're going to move on. John H. Roberts says, can we give California back to Mexico with an apology? I'm not even sure if that's what Mexico would want. That's the tough part about it. I'm not even sure. I cannot say. I cannot say on that. But good intuition there. But yes, so we're going to move on to the next segment, which is, I did pose the question, did you miss International Men's Day? Or did you? And then we'll have our final segment to come from the walkaway movement taking on CNN outside of their headquarters today in Atlanta. We will have that. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And thanks so much, guys, for taking care of the channelytics today. I really appreciate it. That means, hitting the unlike button, or sharing if you want to throw caution to the wind. I always say, hey, it's nice if you want to throw caution to the wind. All right. So with that said, what you see before you is from our friends at the JBS. And once again, this segment of our show is brought to you by our friends at the JBS. The UN hijacks #International Men's Day with feminist, quote, wokeness. This is written by Selwyn Duke. All right. All right. So for your flavor, quote, happy hashtag International Men's Day to all the male allies around the world who support women, defy gender roles, fight gender based violence, and stand up for equality, end quote. And the rest of you toxically masculine dudes can, well, go pound sand. That's the message many are getting after the United Nations decided to celebrate International Men's Day, IMD, with the above quoted line. As the NOQ report put it Friday, quote, nothing says, quote, woke like celebrating International Men's Day by focusing on only men who are okay with not promoting men, end quote. Quote, if that sounds confusing, the site continued, quote, just look at what the United Nations tweeted today, courtesy of their puppet masters among the United Nations women's groups. So we've talked about this before about the whole intersectionality. So I think they find that to be more politically expedient these days because we have talked about like the 60s, 70s, in which, most women or the feminist movement, they were kind of tired of being relegated to making coffee and printing papers. And what I've cited, maybe the Weatherman Underground and the women a part of that. That's Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn. If that jogs a memory a bit. But here you have something from the UN themselves. And so we'll get into the loop of idioms that I quoted in today's stream, and you'll start to recognize some of these. You'll start to recognize some of these terms. Okay, so according to this, they said, not man up, stand up for equality. Now, who's under attack here? All right, so the UN underscore women invites everyone everywhere to support hashtag generation equality. unwomen.org. All right. So according to this, that's precisely what Twitter respondents did too, standing up for equality. They noted the double standards of making IMD about women, for example. See, you see what I'm saying? I'm building up to you can't quite seem to have an International Men's Day without women. So is it actually an International Men's Day if you have to declare that you're standing up for women? I don't know. Do you guys understand? Are you guys picking up the double speak right now? So yeah, but it's an attack. It seems that the attack on men just never really quite goes away in this culture. Like the effemination, effemination is what they are. It's what they want. It's what they want in this great reset. Sit down, man. Go pound the sand. Take a back seat. All right. So then we have of course another side of the coin that says others pointed out that if you go by the numbers, quote, male privilege is not quite what it's cracked up to be. So according to Miss Murder Smith, stop trying to make this about women. Hashtag International Men's Day isn't about us. And that's perfectly fine. Men's mental health is a very important issue and deserves the attention today. So when I click this, it will show you all the things that this person decides to highlight. She says, because men constitute 76% of suicides, constitute 85% of homeless people, are the victims of 70% of homicides, are victims of 40% of domestic abuse, are victims of most violent crime, and serve 64% longer prison sentences. So, of course, you can imagine that rally went back and forth. I mean, perhaps this may even be the spark that got Candace Owens. I think Candace Owens ended up getting censored because she talked about somebody being in a dress. So, thank you guys so much for tuning in. But I will give you a little bit of background on this. Let's see. So, hello, Joseph Francis Burton. Thank you so much for coming in. So, yes, we are talking about intersectionality, and the UN. This is at the top of their agenda, and I've talked about this before about how all these words just kind of keep looping and looping, but they're not. This is not materializing out of nowhere. And we've heard these words: imagine, rethink. And I asked earlier, what if you had $1 for every time you heard one of these idioms or buzzwords? I mean, on the domestic side, you've had Biden lead with the tone of uncertainty in his campaign. What kind of country do we want to be? As I paraphrase, build back better. And you also have heard the same loop and same idioms from around the world, from Trudeau, Schwab, and of course the UN. So we have a few pivotal quotes from the intersectionality community or the activist, and it's more they're admitting that, quote, we tend to talk about race inequality as separate from inequality based on gender, class, sexuality, or immigrant status. What's often missing is how some people are subject to all of these, and the experience is not just some of its parts. Now, that is a quote from one of the UN's lawyers, civil rights advocates, and intersectionalist feminists, Kimberly Crenshaw. So they're focusing on how all of these things, how all these subjects touch each other somehow. You got to make everything equal. We've got to use this time to make everything equal, and that just seems to be a recurring theme across the board. And of course, build back better. So there again, that was an idea or a slogan that's not, it's not Joe Biden's of his own. It actually very much comes from the UN, which most things on the left come from the UN agenda. That's not a secret here. So, and I'll give you a final quote, a couple more quotes, and then I'll give you our final imagery for the day. And I'll let you guys get back to your Saturday. So, while issues ranging from discrimination based on gender identity to disparate environmental burdens may seem separate at first, intersectional feminism illuminates the connections between all fights for justice and liberation. It shows us that fighting for equality means not only turning the tables on gender injustices, but rooting out all forms of oppression. It serves as a framework through which to build inclusive, robust movements that work to solve overlapping forms of discrimination simultaneously. As concurrent, ongoing crises unfold across the globe today, what do you think they're talking about? We can use an intersectional feminist lens to understand their linkages and build back better. A new normal must be fair for all because crises lay bare the structural inequalities that shape our lives. They are also moments of big resets. You got it, reset. Catalyst for rebuilding societies that offer justice and safety to everyone. They provide a chance to redefine, quote, normal, end quote, rather than return to business as usual. Apropos, right? Shout out to everybody in this stream. So I submit that, and I've talked about this before, like we should have gotten out of the UN. Like don't just come out of the World Health Organization, because guess who parents the World Health Organization? The UN. That is their group. And it is their agenda that they want to prevail. Right next to the party of Davos, I guess is what we could say. So that's where we're going. That's where your loop is just coming out of. It's coming from across the world. This is a global loop that we're in. These are global idioms that we're dealing with, and they just keep coming up. They're not hiding them anymore. And I also submit once again that the actual climate change or the crisis is on the other side of this COVID-19, which we don't know how far on the other side, but we know it's there. Philip J. Turner says, whoops, we need out. I'm doing the wrong one. We need out of the UN and NATO. I concur. Joseph Francis Burton says, a new normal, another buzz phrase I have heard too much lately. And Old Head says, thanks so much, Old Head Deuce. I live for your approval around here. Who would I be without you guys? Thanks so much for coming around. And Philip, I mean, silly as I want to be, says, oh, we won't do that one. So I'm going to read this one. And Melinda Ann Burns says, so much smoke and mirrors. Need to clean those mirrors with vinegar and newspaper so that we can see clearly once again. Thank you. Thank you for that tip. I like that idea. So yes, so that was pretty much I try to keep the dots going, not make them too painful on a Saturday. But I think we're gonna see more of the King Newsom, King Gavin Newsom doing his lavish dinners and we'll see more of that and we'll see more of the Pelosi types, and refrigerators and and ice cream and ice cream above upscale or highbrow ice cream out of the freezer. We'll see that. So for the final installment on today, I just wanted to show you a little bit. We have some patriots that are still doing their thing out there. They're conservatives, they're patriots, and they're actually a part of, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the walkaway movement, but it looks like they had quite a few speakers as always. And it looks like they were pretty fired up. They were actually outside of CNN today in Atlanta and basically calling CNN out for misleading the public. And right, the think tank, I agree. Thanks so much. All right, so I'm going to be taking you guys over there, and we'll have one more word for our sponsors. And thank you so much, Audrey TV, for coming out. One word for our sponsors, and then we'll get you guys to that clip from today's rally outside of CNN. So a lot of powerful speeches, but I think I'm only going to share one of those with you. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and now to the sponsors. If you're looking for great content creators on the subject of automobiles, current events, politics, culture, history, you name it, take a look at our patrons: Derek C. Williams, Killer Whale Channels, The Definition of Anarchy, Chrysler Imperial H, Let the Truth Be Told, Little Miss Goth, AZ Infidel, Cold War Jesus, and Anthony Scioli. And now, back to the news. All right, guys, thanks so much for sharing your Saturday with me and for lending me your ear on this Saturday. Thank you so much for that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you over to one of the speeches at the walkaway movement. Now, this might touch you or it may, I don't know. We'll see what happens, but I thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn.
So why do you want us to hate white men? Why do you don't want us to support Donald Trump? Why? Because Donald Trump understands what it really means for African Americans to be independent. And an EBT card won't do it, but a platinum card will. Don't give us checks. Give us opportunity to have jobs and be job creators. Let us start business. That's how we grow ourselves out of a deficit, not by raising taxes like Joe Biden wants to do. But I want to go back to CNN. When they saw that amount of support that President Trump had prior to getting elected, they went out with their plane and played the race card. They played the race card. And you know what CNN said then? I'm going to tell you what CNN really stands for. Where is it? Somewhere around here. They panicked. It stands for Control Negroes Now. I'll say it again because you thought I mispronounced what I was saying. Control Negroes Now. Too many black people watch CNN and they know it. And the whole narrative is having black people that they recruited and paid to attack white people, to get us mad at the Republicans, to get us mad at Donald Trump. And they can't find one black man like me who's not just somebody that can be paid, but can come on there and challenge their narrative. And if you're so concerned about diversity, CN, look at your own damn board.
All right, guys, thank you so much once again for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn, which I will tell you that there were several speakers, and you guys, if you guys are a member, or if you follow, if you not that you're a member, you don't have to be a member of anything, but if you follow Brandon Strock and the Walkaway movement, they're all over the place all of the time, and they're going to keep this thing up. So kudos to them for their efforts, and hope you guys are having a great Saturday. And actually, I'm going to open this up just for a few minutes. We'll see if we have any takers on this Saturday, and then we're going to exit out of here, let you guys get back to what you like to do on Saturday at this time. But thank you guys so much for lending me your ear and your time, because you do have choices around here. I do not take it for granted. And I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. So I will give a shout out, the final shout out, while I wait to see if anybody's going to give us a ring here today. Shout out to Philip J. Turner, Silly as I Want to Be, Old Head Deuce, William Welch. Hello. Thank you so much for coming in. Joshua Goff, Audrey TV, Silly as I Want to Be. If I duplicate your name, I just take it as another. It's a part of the charm here. Melinda Ann Burns, Joseph Francis Burton, thank you so much for coming in. And it looks like that's going to do it. That's going to do it for today. Angela Reed, thank you guys so much for coming in. And thanks so much to the loyal patrons, the subscribers, and the spirited followers over on Periscope. You guys are the best. I really appreciate it. So I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to see if you want to come in, and I'll try not to get into anything else too deep before we get out of here. So it looks like we don't have any takers. And I'll read a couple comments and then we're out of here. Nick Smith says, thank you for keeping us informed. Oh, thank you so much for coming in, Nick Smith. I really appreciate you guys and all you do. Melinda says, stay safe. Family calls, blessings. You guys have a great holiday. I don't know if you'll get a chance to come back in, because I know next week is Thanksgiving, and who knows, maybe you're going to enjoy your family. And I'm not sure. I think many of the California sheriffs have denied or have said no to Newsom's orders on Thanksgiving. So looks like they won't be restricting your family gatherings. So just keep your ear to the ground on that. Who knows? King Newsom, who knows what he might do? What's next? He might even if he's not successful with that, he might even say, "Oh, make sure you take bites between your wearing your mask again. Not just in public, but install that into your Thanksgiving plans. The mask between bites." All right, no problem. All right, you guys have a great Saturday, and I will see you guys on the next live stream in the comment section. Oh, by the way, before I forget, if you have an opportunity, jump over to the community tab, because we've been talking about kids quite a bit. And if you want to jump over to the nomaskforkids.com, I believe, share your story with them. I'm not sure what's happening there, but I do know that Patrick Wood is very thorough and very professional, and they are really working hard on maintaining what free speech that we have. And who knows, it might be helpful for you to share your story with them. Who knows what could come of it. I'm not sure if this is going to lead to something legal for those who have either suffered or are suffering from the mask. I mean, it's a difficult thing if you have a kid that's that's going to school for 6, 7 hours wearing a mask, and then, oh, you expect me to go to my dance class and wear this mask during my dance class. I would imagine that's a bit of a challenge. So go on over and see what they can do, or either just share your story. And they are looking for, once again, they are looking for firsthand accounts on the no mask for kids. So I thank you guys so much for all that you do. Banging Gears is here. It's nice to see you, Banging Gears. Nice to see you. All right, guys. I hope you guys have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you guys in the next live stream, in the comment section, flash stream, or the next video.